Welcome to AI Paper Podcasts. We're the place where we dive into recent, really impactful AI and tech research.
Yeah, breaking it down for technical folks, AI researchers, ML engineers, anyone who needs to stay updated efficiently.
And today, we're looking back just a little bit, but for a very important reason. We're focusing on the FunSearch paper that came out around December 2023.
Right. It's not the absolute latest, but it's become super relevant again. Understanding FunSearch is a pretty essential background for grasping what's happening with the new AlphaValve system everyone's talking about.
Exactly. AlphaValve has generated a lot of excitement, and it really builds directly on the core ideas that FunSearch pioneered. So you kind of need to get FunSearch first.
So our mission today really is to unpack FunSearch. We want to get into its core concepts, the key findings, how it actually works.
And lay that groundwork so we can all better appreciate what AlphaValve brings to the table.
Precisely. Let's jump in.
Okay, so FunSearch. The paper starts by tackling a known issue with LLMs in science, right? This idea of confabulation.
Yeah, exactly. LLMs are amazing, but they can sometimes, make things up. They generate plausible sounding stuff, text or code, that isn't actually correct or grounded in fact.
Which is obviously a big problem if you're trying to rely on them for genuine scientific discovery or finding mathematically sound solutions.
Definitely. And that's the gap FunSearch was designed to fill. It tries to harness the creativity of LLMs, but within a framework that ensures correctness.
So how does it do that? The paper calls it an evolutionary procedure. It combines a pre-trained LLM, which is kept frozen.
Meaning it doesn't learn or update during the search process.
Right. It combines that frozen LLM with a systematic evaluator. What does evolutionary really mean here? Is it like genetic algorithms?
It borrows heavily from evolutionary concepts, yeah. Think of it like survival of the fittest, but for computer code. You can start with a bunch of programs. The LLM generates variations or new ideas based on the current best ones. The evaluator checks which ones actually work and how well they perform, and then the successful ones survive and get used to breed the next generation of programs. It's this cycle of variation and selection.
And critically, it's searching for programs that solve the problem, not the solution itself directly. What's the benefit there? Seems indirect.
It might seem indirect, but it's actually one of the core strengths. Finding a program, like a recipe, is often way more valuable than just finding the final dish.
How?
Well, first, interpretability. You can often read the program and understand the logic. That can give you actual scientific insight. Second, scalability. A program might work for the specific problem size you searched on, but often it can also be applied to much larger instances.
Right. The logic scales better than a specific numerical answer might.
Exactly. And third, as we'll see, the structure of the program itself can sometimes reveal underlying mathematical principles or efficient strategies. It's about finding the generative process.
That makes sense. And the paper stresses this works best for problems where you have an efficient evaluate function. Why is that part so crucial?
Because you need that fast feedback loop. The LLM might generate tons of program ideas. You need to be able to quickly test them and see if they're any good.
So the evaluator is the bottleneck, or rather, it can't be the bottleneck.
Precisely. If evaluating a potential solution is super slow, the whole evolutionary process grinds to a halt. You need quick checks to guide the search effectively. It's the fitness function telling the system what's working.
Got it. Okay, so let's break down the moving parts. How does FunSearch actually run? What are the key components?
Right, so it starts with a specification. You need to tell FunSearch what problem you're solving. This means providing that critical evaluate function we just discussed.
The thing that scores the programs.
Yep. And usually you also provide some kind of initial program to get things started. Often, this is what they call a skeleton program.
A skeleton?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Is it just like pseudocode?
It could be. Or it could be actual working code, but with sort of key parts left blank or very basic. Think of it like scaffolding. It gives the LLM some structure, defines maybe the inputs and outputs, the basic flow.
So the LLM isn't starting from a totally blank slate.
Exactly. It helps focus the LLM's creativity on the really tricky or novel parts of the logic, rather than having it waste time figuring out basic structure. They found this guidance makes the search much more effective.
Okay, makes sense. And the elements itself, you mentioned it's pre-trained and frozen. What kind of model did they use?
So the LLM is the generator, the source of new ideas. They initially used Cody, which is based on Google's PaLM 2. Importantly, they picked a model good at fast inference.
Because they need to generate lots of samples quickly.
Right. You're doing this potentially thousands or millions of times. Speed matters. But interestingly, they also found the specific choice of LLM wasn't super critical. They tried StarCoder, an open source model, and got similar results. The key was that it needed to be trained on a lot of code.
So it understands programming constructs and patterns, even if it doesn't understand the specific problem deeply.
Exactly. It provides syntactically correct, plausible code variations.
Okay, LLM generates code. Then what? Evaluation time?
Yep. The generated programs get run. The evaluator checks if they execute correctly and produce a valid output according to the problem rules.
And if they crash or give garbage output?
Discarded. Just thrown away. If they do work, the evaluator scores them. For the cap set problem, for instance, it checks the no threesome to zero rule and scores based on the size of the valid set found.
Simple enough. Keep what works, score it. Where do these working programs go? You mentioned a program's database.
Yes, that's the central repository. It stores all the correct scored programs found so far, but it's cleverer than just a simple list. It uses something called an islands model to encourage diversity.
Islands model, like separate populations.
Pretty much. Imagine several independent groups, or islands, of programs evolving in parallel. Each island runs the generate-evaluate loop.
Why do that? Why not just have one big pool?
It helps prevent the search from getting stuck too early on one type of solution, what's called a local optimum. Having separate islands lets different strategies develop independently for a while. It promotes exploration of diverse approaches.
Do the islands ever interact?
Yeah, periodically. They might discard islands that aren't performing well and reseed them with copies of the best programs from the more successful islands. So good ideas can still spread, but you maintain that initial diversity for longer.
Clever. Okay, so you have this database, especially with islands, full of working programs. How do you decide which ones to show the LLM to inspire the next generation?
That's where best shot prompting comes in. When they want the LLM to generate a new program for a particular island, they sample a few, usually just 2 of the current top scoring programs from that specific island.
Ah, so it sees the local best.
Exactly. Those top programs are put into the prompt for the LLM. It's basically saying, look at these successful examples, learn what makes them good, and try to create something even better. It helps the LLM spot useful patterns and generalize.
And the whole thing runs distributed, right? To handle the load.
Absolutely. Generating and evaluating potentially millions of programs is computationally heavy, so they built it as a distributed system. You have the central database, then multiple samplers, which run the LLM inference, usually on GPUs.
And multiple evaluators, which run and score the code, probably on CPUs.
That's the typical setup, yeah. More evaluators than samplers usually, since evaluation might be faster per instance, but you need to do way more of it. They all work asynchronously, communicating with the database. It allows massive parallelism.
Okay, I think I've got a good picture of the mechanics now. Let's get to the results. The paper highlights some really cool mathematical discoveries, starting with the cap set problem.
Yes, this is a really fascinating one. The cap set problem is a classic challenge in extremal combinatorics. Terence Tao even called it one of his favorite open questions.
High praise. So what is the problem, simply put?
You're looking for the largest possible set of points or vectors in a specific kind of space, an n-dimensional grid, where each coordinate is 0, 1, or 2. So vectors in 1 math BZ3. The condition is that no 3 distinct vectors you choose from your set can add up to the 0 vector, coordinate-wise modulo 3.
Geometrically, that means no 3 points are on a line, right?
Exactly. Finding the maximum size of such a set, the cap set, for a given dimension n is surprisingly hard, and understanding how this maximum size grows as n gets bigger is a major open question. Why is it so important, though?
Yeah, why the fuss?
Well, it connects to other deep problems, like finding sets of integers without arithmetic progressions. And honestly, mathematicians don't have a strong intuition for how large these sets should really get. Progress here often sheds light on related combinatorial questions, too.
So how did FunSearch tackle it? Did it try to directly build the sets?
No. Again, it searched for a program. Specifically, it evolved a priority function. This function takes a potential vector, one of the points in the null.math PC3 space, and assigns it a score.
Okay, a scoring function for points. Then what?
Then, a simple greedy algorithm uses this priority function. It starts with an empty set and iteratively adds the highest priority vector that doesn't violate the rule, that doesn't form a line with any 2 points already in the set.
And the result. This is the big one, isn't it?
It really is. For dimension 1/8 teralers, FunSearch discovered a cap set of size 512.
Which was bigger than known before.
Yes. The previous record, I think, was 496. And what's really striking is that FunSearch found this pretty much from scratch. It wasn't explicitly told to use known constructions or how to combine smaller caps, which was how the previous records were set.
Wow. That's impressive. And you mentioned interpretability earlier. Did that apply here?
Absolutely. Because the output was the program for the priority function, the researchers could actually look at the code.
What did they learn?
By simplifying the FunSearch-generated code, they could understand the structure of the set it was building. They even noticed it had similarities to another known structure called the hill cap. So finding the program gave them mathematical insight, not just a number.
Incredible. Okay, so that's finding specific large sets. But FunSearch also helped with the bigger picture, the asymptotic size, using something called admissible sets.
That's right. Admissible sets, specifically constant weight admissible sets, are another combinatorial object. They're used to establish lower bounds on something called the cap set capacity.
Which is basically how fast the maximum cap set size grows with the dimension n.
Exactly. Finding bigger admissible sets gives us better guarantees on how large cap sets can be in very high dimensions.
And FunSearch again evolved a priority function.
Yep, same approach. Evolve a priority function, this time used by a greedy algorithm to grow an admissible set. And it found a new one called an 12(7)I admissible set.
Which improved the lower bound on the capacity.
It did. But again, the really cool part was analyzing the program FunSearch discovered.
What did the program reveal this time?
Symmetry. They noticed the priority function treated certain groups of coordinates in a symmetric way. You could swap coordinates within these groups, and the resulting set would still be a valid admissible set.
Ah, so that suggested a specific kind of structure to look for.
Precisely. This insight allowed the researchers to narrow their focus drastically. They started specifically searching for symmetric admissible sets, which is a much smaller, more structured search space. It's a great example of AI suggesting a path for human researchers.
And did that focused search pay off?
Big time. By searching within that symmetric space, they found even larger sets, an I-1510 set and part of an A2417 set. These led to a new record lower bound on the cap set capacity. The paper mentions it was a bigger improvement than had been seen in the last 20 years.
Wow. So FunSearch made an initial discovery. Humans interpreted the program to find a hidden symmetry, and that insight led to even better results. That's a powerful synergy.
Absolutely. It really highlights FunSearch not as a replacement for mathematicians, but as a powerful collaborator, uncovering structures or directions they might not have found otherwise.
Okay. Amazing results in math. But FunSearch wasn't limited to that, right? The paper also talks about algorithmic discoveries, specifically online bin packing.
Yeah, moving from pure math to a classic optimization problem. Online bin packing is fundamental. You have items of different sizes arriving one by one.
And you have to put them into bins, like boxes with a fixed capacity.
Right. And online means you have to decide where to put an item as it arrives without knowing what items are coming next. The goal is to use the minimum number of bins overall.
Sounds tricky because you lack future information. Like packing a moving truck as people keep bringing you boxes.
Exactly. That lack of foresight is the challenge. So you rely on heuristics, simple rules of thumb to decide which bin to use for the current item. Things like first fit, use the first bin it fits in, or best fit, use the fullest bin it still fits in.
And FunSearch tried to find better heuristics.
Yes. It evolved a program that acts as a heuristic. This program takes the item size and the current state of all the bins, how full they are, and outputs a priority score for each bin.
And then you just put the item in the bin with the highest score.
Simple as that. They actually started the evolution from a skeleton based on the best fit heuristic, giving it a reasonable starting point.
How do the FunSearch heuristics do compared to standard ones like first fit and best fit?
Really well. They tested them on standard benchmarks, the OR library datasets. FunSearch's evolved heuristics consistently used fewer bins than both first fit and best fit across all the datasets they tried.
Impressive. Did they generalize, or were they just tuned to the test data?
That's a key question. And yes, they seem to generalize well. Heuristics evolved on smaller problems also performed well on larger, unseen instances. That suggests FunSearch was finding genuinely robust packing strategies.
Did the researchers get any sense of what strategies FunSearch discovered? Was it just a better version of best fit or something different?
It seemed to be something more nuanced. They observed a general trend in the best FunSearch heuristics. They did prioritize putting items into nearly full bins if the fit was very tight, like classic best fit.
Okay.
But otherwise, if there wasn't a perfect tight fit available, they often preferred placing the item in a bin that would leave a larger remaining gap rather than the smallest possible gap.
Huh. That's counterintuitive to minimizing immediate waste. Why would that work better?
The thinking is it helps avoid creating lots of small, awkward leftover spaces that become hard to fill later. By sometimes leaving larger gaps, you maybe maintain more flexibility for future items. It's a subtle strategy that might not be obvious.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It really shows how this approach can uncover non-obvious algorithmic improvements.
It does. And it leads into the broader discussion about why FunSearch works, which might seem a bit surprising at first glance.
Right, you have this frozen LLM that doesn't really understand cap sets or bin packing.
Yeah.
Yet it helps find record-breaking solutions.
Exactly. The key seems to be that the LLM is a very good generator of diverse, syntactically plausible code snippets. It throws out lots of ideas. The evolutionary framework, guided by the skeleton and, crucially, the fast evaluator, acts as a powerful filter. It finds the rare good ideas within the noise.
So the LLM provides the variation, the evaluator provides the selection pressure.
Precisely. And searching in program space, as we discussed, is key. Programs are compact descriptions. A short program can generate a huge, complex mathematical object or define a sophisticated heuristic. It connects to this idea of finding solutions with low Kolmogorov complexity, simple descriptions for complex things.
And the interpretability is a major bonus, as the Symmetry Discovery showed.
Absolutely. Getting code out means you have a chance to understand why it works and potentially improve it further or gain new scientific insight.
So what kinds of problems seem best suited for FunSearch, based on their findings?
Well, you definitely need that efficient evaluator. That's non-negotiable. It also seems to help if the scoring provides rich feedback, not just win-lose, but some gradient of how good a solution is.
And the ability to provide a skeleton seems quite helpful too.
Yeah, providing that initial structure or guidance seems to really focus the search and make it more efficient.
Looking ahead, you can imagine that as LLMs get even better at coding,
The potential for systems like FunSearch only grows. Better code generation could lead to discovering even more sophisticated programs for harder problems. The paper ends on that note, expecting automatically tailored algorithms to become more common.
which brings us right back to AlphaValve, building on this foundation.
Exactly why understanding FunSearch is so important right now. It provides the context for what AlphaValve is trying to achieve, presumably leveraging the power of even more capable models like Gemini.
Okay, great. So let's quickly recap the main points. FunSearch represents this really novel blend of LLM creativity and evolutionary search.
That finds programs, not just answers. This led to real discoveries. A record cap set in 8D, better bounds on cap set capacity thanks to insights from the code.
And better generalizable algorithms for practical problems like online bin packing, again revealing non-intuitive strategies.
And knowing this helps us appreciate what AlphaValve is aiming for, likely scaling this approach with newer, more powerful models.
So the final thought for you, the listener, is this. Reflecting on FunSearch's ability to find new math and algorithms. What tough problems in your own field, maybe in AI, ML engineering, or something else entirely, could potentially benefit from having an AI collaborator that searches for solutions in the space of programs?
Definitely something to think about. We highly recommend checking out the original FunSearch paper if you want more detail, and of course, keeping an eye on AlphaValve.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.